People think Amtrak is just a slow, annoying mode of public transportation, but it's much more. On February 22nd, 2020, I embarked on a childhood dream, taking Amtrak trains number 58, the city of New Orleans to Chicago, train number 7, the westbound Empire Builder, all the way to Seattle. I started my journey in Marks, Mississippi. Once I boarded Amtrak number 58, the city of New Orleans to Chicago, I settled into a Superliner roomette. I had roomette number 21 in the transition sleeper, which was the first car on this train. Superliner roomette could hold 2 people, but it was just me traveling on this trip as I was solo. The next stop would be Memphis, Tennessee. Memphis is a scheduled smoke stop on this train's route. As you can see, the engine was being fueled. I decided to get off and get a fresh breath of air before heading to sleep. Once I got back on board, I headed back to my sleeper car, room number 21 of the transition sleeper. After a good night's sleep, I woke up as we were going through the town of Humboldt, Illinois. Our next station stop on the schedule was to be Champaign-Urbana. After departing Champaign-Urbana, our next stop was Kankakee, Illinois. Once we got to the outskirts of Chicago, I decided to check out the train's Sightseer Lounge car. The lower level of this car sells snacks and beverages. The upper level is used as an observation deck. With floor-to-ceiling windows, there's hardly nothing you can miss from looking out at these. If you're a sleeping car passenger, you have access to free coffee every morning in the middle of your sleeping car. Now arriving Chicago, Illinois. As we enter Chicago, our train pulls forward on another set of tracks, and we will reverse into the station. I will say, once arrived in Chicago, the Great Hall inside of Chicago Union Station is absolutely breathtaking. Traveling with Amtrak is less stressful because when you're called to board your train, you just go to board your train. There's nothing more to it. In Chicago, all business class and sleeper car passengers have complimentary access to the Metropolitan Lounge. This is my favorite part of the lounge, the Pennsylvania room. This section of the lounge was very quiet, and not many people bothered to climb up the steps to access this part of the lounge. I became settled into my roomette on the next train, Amtrak's number 7 westbound Empire Builder. We have an on-time departure at 2:15 p.m. out of Chicago Union Station. Once in the suburbs of Chicago, our sleeping car attendant came around and introduced himself and offered free orange juice. Our sleeping car attendant went by the name of Gull, if I can recall correctly. He gave all of his passengers in his sleeping car a schedule. People say Amtrak is dying. However, this was a common sight among my whole trip. As we approached Winona, Minnesota, my sleeping car attendant, Gull, put down my bed. Once the lower level bed is let down, there's not much room to stand, but there's enough to work with. Winona, Minnesota was a fresh air stop, or a smoke stop, if you will. After departing Rugby, North Dakota the next morning, I decided to get some coffee, then head down to the dining car and check out the menu for breakfast. The French toast sounded good, so that's what I went with breakfast for that morning. Around 8:15, we arrived in Minot, North Dakota. This was a service stop for the train where it was serviced, cleansed, and refueled. Now, I know a lot of you would consider viewing this kind of scenery as a waste of time, but to me, exploring America by train is something I've always wanted to do. I enjoyed every bit of it. As lunch grew closer and closer, I decided to try one of Amtrak's hamburgers from the dining car. I ate it in my roomette, and actually it was quite peaceful. The next fresh air stop that I got off at was Shelby, Montana. This is probably one of my favorite stops, as we could walk the whole train, and we could even go inside the station to visit. Here I am in front of my sleeping car number 731. After we left Shelby, I decided it was time to take a nap. When I woke up, we had just left the station of Browning, Montana. It wasn't quite time to eat dinner yet, but I decided to venture to the observation lounge and view the sunset after we passed Browning, Montana. If you're in a sleeper car, all meals are included in your ticket. That being said, I tried the most expensive option since it was no extra charge to me. The land and sea, it was pretty good. By the time we reached Whitefish, Montana, I'd already gotten comfortable in bed, so I decided not to get off on that smoke stop. After most people had settled to sleep, in the middle of the night, our train split into two different trains at Spokane, Washington. One was bound for Portland, and one was bound for Seattle. The next morning, I woke up early to see what was in store for the day. I believe this was around Leavenworth, Washington. I will say this about the scenery. This was the third and final day on the train, but the scenery on the third day was probably more impressive than any of the other stuff that we'd seen. Now, don't get me wrong, I love seeing America, but this was what I really came for. As we started getting closer to Seattle, the snow started to taper off, but the scenery was still stunning nonetheless. So, when you think of Amtrak, what do you think of? A lot of Americans see Amtrak as just an outdated, slow way to travel. Personally, I like trains more than I do planes. And I'm not just talking about when I see them, I'm talking about when I ride them. Planes are just so cramped and confined, and it's like sending a giant tube through the sky. When you're on the train, you can see so much scenery. You can get up, walk around, and even have a full course meal, depending on where you are. My trip comes to a close as we start to get closer to the destination city of Seattle. My sleeper car attendant, Gul, has been fantastic and has kept the bathrooms and showers spotless. Once in Seattle, I got on the 505 service, the southbound Cascades. I took a short 12-minute ride to Tukwila, Washington, where I stayed near the Seattle airport. As the southbound 505 left Tukwila, Washington, I realized my journey was over. One thing I realized on this trip, the journey is the destination. Thanks for watching. I'll see you soon, Amtrak.